China has just built an off-roader that can do something no American or European SUV on sale can match. It can drive more than 1,000 kilometers, it can spin almost in its own footprint, and when the road disappears underwater, it can literally float. Now imagine a flash flood tearing through a city. Cars stall, engines die. Expensive SUVs get pushed sideways by the current. Then this 3.5-ton luxury machine drives straight into the same water. The level rises past the wheels, past the doors, and eventually, the tires lose contact with the ground completely. For almost any normal SUV, that's the end. But this one doesn't sink. Its body seals itself. Its 4 electric motors keep working, and the vehicle starts moving through the water like a boat. This isn't a prototype. It isn't a CGI demonstration. And it isn't some futuristic promise for 2035. People can already buy it. It's called the Yangwang U8, and it may be one of the clearest signs yet that the global car industry is changing faster than most people realize. Because Mercedes has spent decades perfecting the G-Class. Land Rover built its entire reputation around going where other vehicles couldn't. America gave us the Hummer, Rivian, and the Cybertruck. Yet none of them currently gives you this exact combination of extreme range, 4 independent motors, a true tank turn, and an automatic emergency floating system. And that's what makes this story much bigger than one strange Chinese SUV. Because over the next few minutes, you're going to see several pieces of Chinese automotive technology that sound like science fiction, technology already reaching real customers, while many American buyers still don't even have access to anything like it. And once you see what's underneath this machine, the fact that it can float may not even be the most surprising part. The rise of BYD. The U8 comes from Yangwang, the ultra-luxury arm of BYD. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, here's the part that should stop you. BYD didn't start as a car maker. It started making batteries, the small, rechargeable kind, for phones and tools. For years, the world barely noticed them. Then they taught themselves to build cars, and by 2025 they were selling more electric vehicles than anyone on the planet, Tesla included. For years, the world laughed them off as a maker of cheap, forgettable cars. Then, Warren Buffett quietly invested. The technology kept improving, and the laughing slowly stopped. Yangwang is what happens when a company that dominates batteries decides it wants to build the most technically outrageous vehicles on Earth, price be damned. The U8 was their opening statement, and they aimed it squarely at the untouchable names, the Mercedes G-Class, the Range Rover, the Land Rover Defender. The vehicles that have defined serious luxury off-roading for decades. 4 motors, new possibilities. Now here's where it gets interesting, because BYD didn't try to beat those legends at their own game. They changed the game entirely. And the secret is a single piece of engineering with a name you'll want to remember, the E4 platform. In plain terms, it means the U8 has 4 separate electric motors, one at every single wheel. Not one engine splitting its power 4 ways. 4 independent brains, each controlling one wheel on its own, instantly. Hold on to that idea, because almost everything jaw-dropping this SUV does traces straight back to it. And before we get to the wild stuff, just feel the raw numbers for a second. Those 4 motors produce roughly 1,180 horsepower combined. This is a vehicle heavier than 3 grand pianos stacked together, and it can launch from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in about 3.5 seconds. That's supercar fast, in a body shaped like a fortress. Let that sink in, because it's the first sign that the usual rules simply don't apply here. Think about what that actually unlocks. In a normal car, all 4 wheels are more or less forced to cooperate. They're linked. But when every wheel has its own motor, you can do something no traditional off-roader can. You can spin 2 wheels forward and 2 wheels backward at the same time. And when you do that with a vehicle this size, it doesn't drive in a circle. It rotates on the spot. Engineers call it a tank turn. Imagine you're stuck on a narrow mountain trail, a cliff rising on one side, a sheer drop on the other, and no room to swing the nose around. In a normal SUV, that's the moment your stomach sinks. You're doing a 15-point turn on the edge of a cliff, or reversing for a mile. A normal SUV is effectively trapped. The U8 simply pivots in place, like a soldier turning to face the other direction, and drives back out the way it came. That's not a party trick. On a real trail, that's the difference between getting home and getting stranded. And the newest, longer version of the U8 takes it a step further. It can crab walk, sliding diagonally sideways to inch out of a tight spot without even turning the wheel the normal way. These aren't features you'll find buried in a rival's brochure. They don't exist on a G-Class. They don't exist on a Defender. They exist here because 4 independent motors make possible what a single engine never could. One brain per wheel changes what the word off-roader even means, emergency floating mode. But the tank turn is just the warm-up, because those same 4 independent motors are what let this thing do the impossible in water. And this is where the story stops sounding like a car review and starts sounding like science fiction. Here's the setup. Most SUVs can wade through shallow water, a flooded road, a small stream. It's a standard off-road skill. The U8 does that too, and it does it better than the icons. It can push through water up to 1,400 millimeters deep with its snorkel. That's water rising to about the height of a kitchen counter, deep enough to swallow most vehicles whole. Its approach and departure angles, the measure of how steep a slope it can climb onto or drop off of without grinding its bumpers into the dirt, actually beat the legendary G-Class. In the numbers that hardcore off-roaders actually argue about, the newcomer quietly edges out the icon. So already, on paper, it out-off-roads the machine that has ruled this space for generations. And then it does the thing nobody else does. When the water gets too deep to wade, when the SUV actually starts to lift off the ground, most vehicles are finished. Water floods in, the electronics die, and you're in serious trouble. The U8 has a mode for exactly that moment. It's called Emergency Floating Mode, and here's the part that genuinely surprised me. It triggers by itself. The vehicle has sensors constantly watching the water around it, and when it detects that it's about to float, it seals itself and switches into boat mode without the driver lifting a finger. Now, how does a 3.5-ton machine float at all? The same way a steel ship does. The body is sealed tight enough that the air trapped inside displaces enough water to hold the whole thing up. The moment the sensors feel the vehicle getting light, the U8 closes itself off, cuts the systems that would let water in, and effectively becomes a hull. And those 4 motors? They spin the wheels to gently push the whole SUV forward through the water, like paddles. It can stay afloat for up to 30 minutes and paddle along at a slow walking pace. Not fast, but fast enough to carry you off the deep water and back to solid ground before the clock runs out. 30 minutes doesn't sound like much until it's the 30 minutes between you and a rescue that isn't coming. A 3.5-ton luxury SUV, turning itself into a boat automatically to get you out of a flood alive. The reality of limits. Now, I promised you honesty, because that's the only way any of this is worth your time. So let me be straight about the limits, and they matter. This is an emergency system, not a leisure feature. You are not taking this thing water skiing on a Sunday afternoon. BYD rates it for calm water only. No strong currents, no waves, no debris. And after you use the floating mode even once, you're required to take the vehicle in for a full inspection within hours, at your own cost, to make sure nothing was compromised. So this isn't a car that laughs at oceans. It's a car engineered to survive the single most dangerous moment an off-roader can face, the moment the ground disappears and the water wins. And the honest truth is that no Western automaker sells anything that does this. Tesla hinted the Cybertruck could briefly float and never delivered a real, tested system. Others have teased tank turns and quietly dropped them. Let's name names because vague claims are worthless. The Hummer EV has a clever move called crab walk, but that's diagonal creeping, not a true spin on the spot. Rivian famously demonstrated a tank turn years ago and then quietly shelved it before it ever reached a single customer. Tesla suggested the Cybertruck could briefly serve as a boat, and the trucks shipped with no tested automatic floating system at all. So across the entire Western industry, the 2 headline tricks, a real production tank turn and an automatic emergency float, You cannot buy them together on anything at any price. The U8 shipped both to paying customers. That's the gap, and it's not a small one. And it isn't as if the U8 achieves this by being cheap and cheerful. It carries a price around $150,000, the most expensive mass-produced vehicle China has ever built, and the longer, plusher U8L pushes past $175,000. This is China openly saying it can charge Range Rover money and still hand you more capability. That confidence, from a brand this young, is the part the establishment finds genuinely unsettling. The EREV advantage. Remember the promise in the title: it crosses rivers, and no Western badge can follow it there. You've now seen exactly why, but that still leaves the biggest question of all. Why build this at all? And here's the answer that reframes everything. Floods are getting worse and more frequent all over the world. In parts of China, seasonal flooding can turn streets into rivers in minutes. Suddenly, a car that can keep its occupants dry and mobile when the water rises isn't a gimmick. It's a genuinely serious idea about what a vehicle should be able to do when the climate stops being predictable. Think of the news footage you've seen. Underpasses swallowed in an afternoon. Families stranded on car roofs waiting for rescue. In a world where that's becoming normal, a vehicle that keeps you dry and moving isn't showing off. It's answering a question the industry mostly ignored. The tank turn wins you a trail. The floating mode could win you your life. That's the leap from spectacle to substance. And it's the moment you realize the engineers weren't showing off. They were solving a real problem the rest of the industry hadn't taken seriously. Which brings us to the range, the other half of what makes this machine almost unfair. Remember, this is an enormous, heavy, luxurious off-roader, and it's electric. And if you know anything about electric vehicles, you know the nightmare scenario. You take one deep into the wilderness, the battery drains, and there's no charger for 200 miles. That fear has kept serious adventurers away from electric off-roaders for years. So how does the U8 clear well over 1,000 kilometers on a single fill? The longer U8L version rated around 1,160 kilometers, without ever leaving you stranded in the middle of nowhere. Here's the clever answer, and it surprises people. The U8 isn't a pure electric vehicle. It's something called an EREV, an extended range electric vehicle. And once you understand the trick, it's brilliant. There's a petrol engine inside, but, and this is the key, that engine is never connected to the wheels. It never drives the car. Its only job is to sit there and act as a generator, quietly making electricity to top up the battery as you go. So you still get the instant, precise control of a fully electric drivetrain, the 4 motors, the tank turn, the float. But you never have to find a charger in the wild. When the battery runs low, the engine hums to life, refills it, and you keep moving. Think of it like a phone with a tiny generator built into the case. You never plug the wall into the screen. The generator just keeps the battery topped up so the screen never dies. The wheels only ever feel the smooth, instant push of electricity. The petrol engine is the quiet backup singer that never touches the microphone. You can plug it in like an EV when you're home, or pour in fuel like a normal car when you're 1,000 kilometers from anywhere. That single design decision is what quietly kills the biggest fear standing between adventurers and electric off-roaders. The terror of a dead battery with no charger for 100 empty miles in every direction. The U8 simply refuses to let that scenario exist, and there's a reason BYD went this route instead of a giant battery, and it's the kind of honest engineering choice that tells you they were thinking clearly. To move a 3.5-ton SUV on batteries alone for that kind of distance, you'd need a battery pack so enormous and so heavy it would wreck the very off-road ability that makes the U8 special. The EREV setup sidesteps that entirely. It's the best of both worlds, electric precision, petrol reach, and it's a big part of why nothing in the West quite matches this specific recipe. So step back for a second and look at the full picture, because it's genuinely striking. 4 motors that let it rotate in place, a body that turns into a boat when the water rises, off-road angles that beat the G-Class. Over 1,000 kilometers of range with zero anxiety, a cabin dripping with leather, giant screens, and enough computing power for advanced driver assistance. This is a vehicle that refuses to accept the usual trade-offs. Off-roaders are supposed to be rugged but crude. Luxury SUVs are supposed to be plush but useless in the wild. Electric vehicles are supposed to be limited by range. The U8 looked at all three of those rules and simply ignored them. And it did all of it while wrapping you in genuine luxury. Step inside, and it's a different world from the mud outside. Soft leather, real wood, a wall of crisp screens, a sound system that would embarrass most living rooms. Behind the glass sits a serious brain too. A bank of cameras, radars, and laser sensors feeding a powerful onboard computer that handles advanced driver assistance. So this is not a stripped-down expedition truck. It's a rolling penthouse that also happens to be able to swim, challenging the establishment. But now for the part that really matters, and it's bigger than any single feature. Remember the title. The West has nothing like this. And that's not cheap patriotism or a throwaway line. It's a fact worth sitting with. The Mercedes G-Class, the Range Rover, the Defender, these are institutions. They spent decades, in some cases half a century, building their reputations one rugged mile at a time. They earned genuine respect. And along comes a company that was making phone batteries 20 years ago, and it doesn't just match them. On paper, in raw capability, it leapfrogs them, with tricks their engineers never even attempted. Now, let's keep it fair, because a serious story needs the whole truth, and there's a real other side here. Reputation isn't just marketing. A G-Class has proven itself over decades, in deserts and war zones and mountain passes, in a way the U8 simply hasn't had time to. Nobody yet knows how this incredibly complex machine, 4 motors, a floating body, all that software, holds up after 10 hard years and 100,000 rough miles. It's staggeringly heavy, over 3.5 tons, and weight is a quiet enemy on soft ground, where a lighter vehicle floats over terrain that a heavy one sinks into. All that complexity is also more that can eventually go wrong, and complexity is the opposite of what hardened overlanders usually want 1,000 miles from the nearest town. As an extended range vehicle, it still burns fuel, so it's not the clean conscience choice a pure EV would be. And here's the big one for most of the world. You can't actually buy it in the West yet. For now, it's largely a China-only machine. So the legends still have something the U8 can't buy overnight, a proven track record, and a dealer on your corner. Capability and trust are not the same thing, and it's only honest to say the U8 has won the first, but not yet the second. And yet, the direction is impossible to ignore, because BYD has already confirmed it plans to bring Yangwang to Europe, aiming for around 2027, to go head-to-head with the likes of Bentley and Rolls-Royce on their own turf. This isn't staying behind China's borders. It's coming. Picture that showroom moment. A Chinese SUV parked a few meters from a Bentley, wearing a similar price tag, quietly capable of things the Bentley's engineers never even sketched. And when it arrives, Western buyers are going to stand there and ask a very awkward question. Why can the newcomer from China cross a river and drive 1,000 kilometers when the badge I've trusted my whole life can't? That question is the real threat, not the car. The question it forces everyone to ask. A new chapter for off-roading. Here's the way I'd leave it. For 100 years, the story of the tough, capable, go-anywhere vehicle was written in Germany, in Britain, in America. Those names meant something because they'd earned it in the dirt. The Yangwang U8 doesn't erase that history, but it does something almost more unsettling. It suggests the next chapter might be written somewhere else entirely, by a company that came out of nowhere and decided the old rules were optional. A vehicle that turns into a boat isn't just a neat trick, it's a statement that the people who set the limits of what a car can do are no longer only in the West. Think about how the last century of this actually went. The Land Rover earned its name in the African bush. The G-Class earned its in military service and desert rallies. Respect in this world was always paid for in decades of dust and hardship. The U8 is trying to skip that line, to buy in a single generation what others spent lifetimes earning, using 4 motors and clever software instead of heritage. Maybe that shortcut fails the test of time, or maybe heritage was never as unbeatable as everyone assumed. Either way, that shift is happening whether the legacy brands are ready for it or not. If this changed how you think about what an off-roader can even be, then you're exactly who this channel is for. We dig into the machines quietly rewriting the rules before the rest of the world catches on. And the U8 is only the beginning of this story, because the same company built an electric supercar so extreme it can jump off the ground and holds a world speed record the West spent decades chasing. We break that one down next, so if you want to see how deep this goes, subscribe to Vehicle Insider and watch it right now. The rules of the road are being rewritten, quietly, one impossible feature at a time. The only question left is who's paying attention before it's too late to catch up.